They rolled up in golf carts with badges duct taped to their vests and said, "Sir, we're HOA law enforcement. Surrender your firearms." I blinked twice, looked at the man with aviators and a mullet trying to look intimidating in a fishing vest with "Security" stenciled across it in crooked white paint, and calmly asked, "Are you joking?" He wasn't. Neither were the other two behind him, one clutching a clipboard like it was a rifle, the other filming on a phone, nodding like this was the next sovereign citizen takedown. Viral hit. Welcome to Redstone Grove. The HOA here isn't a homeowners association, it's a poorly disguised cult for people who peeked at Neighborhood Watch. I moved here 2 weeks ago. Bought 5 acres on the edge of the community to get some peace, to train vets, and to keep my facility legally compliant under federal law. My name's Logan. Former Navy SEAL, security consultant, and someone who's really trying not to treat suburban HOA board members like Somali pirates. But they're pushing it. It started with a letter. Polite at first. "Welcome to the community. Please register your landscaping equipment and storage units within 30 days for compliance." Harmless. Then came the friendly reminder that my American flag display exceeded regulation size. Then came the door knock. Karen. Blonde bob, laminated binder, sunglasses on cloudy days. "Hi. You're new. I'm the HOA chairwoman. Your perimeter cameras violate visual harmony guidelines." I smiled. "They're on my property." She smiled back tighter. "But they're visible." I let her ramble about unity, compliance, and the threat of unregistered infrastructure. She left with a smile and a threat. "I'm sure we'll find a way to resolve this." She didn't know my property is federally certified under a defense contract clause. The perimeter isn't just for cameras, it's for containment, response, and threat analysis. But I didn't tell her that. I figured she'd get bored and move on. She didn't. She escalated. Week 2, I found a notice on my door demanding access to inspect the compound. I laughed. Compound? It's a reinforced steel building with biometric locks that stores secure training equipment and veteran outreach materials. It also happens to meet the Department of Defense's DCSA facility clearance requirements. You can't just wander in and poke around. But Karen tried. She brought a crew of clipboard cowboys, self-appointed inspection volunteers. Said they were enforcing new HOA bylaws. I reminded them my land isn't under HOA jurisdiction. They didn't like that answer. They fined me. Twice. Then came the meetings. Oh, he's intimidating. All those veteran bumper stickers. The black truck. The dogs. I wasn't even there, neighbors told me later. Karen started spreading stories about how I was running a rogue militia. That I was dangerous. That I needed to be regulated. She cited HOA Clause 14G. No structure or operation may resemble a militarized facility. It would be funny if it wasn't so predictably stupid. I sent them a letter. Cited federal code, legal precedent, and the HOA's own limitations in their charter. I included a copy of the contract that validated the facility's restricted status. It was met with silence. Then came the enforcers. 3 men. 1 mullet. 2 vests from Amazon. 1 clipboard. All with printed patches. HOA Tactical Division. They patrolled the street in a golf cart with lights screwed on from an old lawnmower. Tried to interrogate my delivery driver. Blocked my exit. Issued fake citations for visual intimidation. I didn't take the bait. Instead, I filed everything. Dates. Times. Names. Recorded interactions. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't push back. I just logged it like I was back in a forward operating base tracking local warlords. Then came today. They came to my gate with a printed seizure notice, declaring that I had 24 hours to hand over all tactical-grade weaponry, accessories, and protective gear. Or face. Community enforcement. That's the phrase they used. Community enforcement. I couldn't help but laugh. You realize what you're standing on, right? I asked them. Mullet guy pointed his finger like it was a weapon. You don't get to hide behind military privilege, sir. You're in a community. You play by our rules now. I turned. Walked back to my house. Inside, past the reinforced entry, I accessed the secure line installed in the comms room. This is Redstone Grove. Site 1. Civilian intrusion. Possible escalation pending. Prepare protocol file. Eyes only. Roger. Verifying perimeter log. Any tampering? They're not competent enough to tamper with a screen door. Copy that. Response assets standing by. I hung up. Stepped back outside. They were still there, trying to look brave. Clipboard guy read off HOA citations like they were reading me my rights. Said the board voted unanimously to enforce compliance. I asked to see the board vote. They said it was verbal and recorded in Karen's notes. That's not a vote. That's a dictator scribbling in a diary. I looked at their badges again. One had a Pokemon sticker peeling off the edge. These were not serious people. But serious people were watching. I knew the feds wouldn't roll up in black SUVs, not unless it got violent. But they were watching the perimeter logs. If any of these clowns stepped over the line, literally, the system would flag it, and I'd be authorized to respond. Legally. Proportionately. So I waited. They left after an hour, after yelling into their walkie-talkies and radioing Karen like she was some kind of base commander. They didn't like that I didn't flinch. That I didn't yell. That I didn't even show them the weapons they were so afraid of. They don't know I don't need them. The real weapons are legal frameworks. Strategy. Patience. Paperwork with teeth. You can disarm a man. You can't disarm a system designed to defend itself. They're coming back. I know they are. But next time, they'll step over the line. And when they do, I won't need to lift a finger. The system will handle them for me. They came back 3 days later with backup, 2 more golf carts, 1 drone, and a guy wearing mirrored shades and a tactical belt so overloaded it looked like a cosplay convention exploded around his waist. HOA tactical enforcement has arrived, he said like it meant something. This time, they didn't knock. They blared a siren, ripped off a kid's toy car, and yelled through a megaphone. This is a courtesy compliance intervention. Please vacate your residence and prepare for equipment forfeiture under HOA Emergency Code 7B. They were filming themselves again. Karen was in the back, grinning like she was running for dictator of a gated banana republic. Clipboard guy now had a body cam duct taped to his chest and a printed sheet that said, Warrant for search and confiscation. Signed by Karen, HOA chair. I stepped outside, calm as ever. My dog didn't even bark. She's trained not to waste energy on clowns. You're on private property, I said, voice low but clear. Leave now. Tactical belt laughed. You can't intimidate us. We've been authorized. You're harboring illegal weaponry in a civilian zone. Incorrect. You're standing on federally registered land operating under a security clearance contract issued by the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency. What you're attempting is a felony. They didn't blink. Just nodded smugly like I was speaking French, and they'd passed the Duolingo lesson once. One of them pulled out zip ties. Another muttered into a walkie-talkie. That's when they crossed the property line. They walked straight past the posted warning signs, metal, weatherproof, large font red lettering that explicitly stated, Federal property, authorized personnel only. Violators subject to prosecution. The second they did, a quiet tone pinged inside my house. Perimeter breach confirmed. Cameras activated. The breach was logged. I watched the red indicator flicker, then stabilize. That's all I needed. Stop moving, I said flatly. They didn't. One guy reached for the lock on my external equipment shed, the one labeled, Do not tamper. I moved. Fast. First guy with the zip ties, disarmed, twisted, zip-tied with his own gear, and on the ground in under 3 seconds. I didn't even break a sweat. Second guy tried to square up, arms wide like I was supposed to be impressed. I ducked under his swing, shoved his shoulder into the golf cart, and yanked the key from the ignition. The siren died. Karen screamed from behind the hedges. "You're assaulting board officers!" "No," I said, kneeling beside the groaning man on the ground. "I'm conducting a lawful citizen's arrest under 18 U.S. Code Section 1382. You just trespassed on a military-certified facility. Congratulations. You're now evidence." Drone Guy panicked and started backing away toward the sidewalk, but he tripped over the curb and face-planted onto the driveway. The drone hit the pavement and shattered into 3 useless pieces. By the time the HOA Tactical Dream Team was zip-tied in a row along my front fence, they finally looked scared. Not because of me, but because I hadn't called the police. I hadn't shouted. I wasn't panicking. I was writing on a clipboard. Calmly. Quietly. Logging every detail. "You know," I said, crouching next to Clipboard Guy, who was wheezing from exertion, "you're lucky I didn't treat this as a military breach. You tried to enter a federal data vault. Did you even read the placard?" He blinked at me, confused. "This isn't a base. It's a neighborhood." I smiled, leaned in. "Wrong. It's a registered site with biometric access to restricted DCSA training modules. You stepped over a red line." I stood. Walked over to Karen, who was still filming and yelling about suing everyone. "Keep filming," I told her. "You'll want evidence when your HOA gets dissolved for criminal impersonation and unlawful detainment attempts." She lowered her phone for the first time. "You can't talk to me like that. I have rights." "Yes, you do. And you just violated mine, my property's federal protections, and your own HOA's charter. Want to hear what happens next?" She tried to talk. I kept going. "First, this incident gets uploaded to the DCSA and tagged under breach protocol. Second, a formal cease and desist order will be drafted. Third, every one of your little soldiers gets processed for impersonating federal officers, which carries a max penalty of 3 years per charge. Fourth, I'll be submitting a full report to your insurance provider, informing them that your HOA sponsored armed harassment on government-certified land." She turned pale. "We didn't know." "You were told," I said. "You were warned. You were handed paperwork. You chose this." The local sheriff showed up 20 minutes later, already briefed. He stepped out, took one look at the lineup of zip-tied wannabe warriors and sighed. "HOA again?" I nodded. "All logged. Want a copy?" He just shook his head and started calling for transport units. "We'll take it from here. You good?" "Never better." Karen tried to spin a sob story for the deputies. How she feared for the neighborhood, how I was hostile, how I'd hidden combat weaponry on civil land. Sheriff didn't buy it. I handed him the federal certification printout and the footage from 3 separate angles. "You assaulted federal property," he told her flatly. "You brought fake cops into a secured zone and tried to confiscate protected equipment. I was enforcing HOA code. There is no HOA code that overrides U.S. federal law." That night, I sat on the porch and reviewed the footage again, adding timestamps, notes, cross-referencing it with the HOA's own bylaws, and finalizing the digital report for the DCSA legal liaison. 3 of the officers were cited for impersonating law enforcement. 1 was found carrying an unregistered firearm. Karen? She was about to get the shock of her HOA life. I didn't go looking for this fight. But if they're going to pick one, they better understand the battlefield. The next morning, they returned. Not to apologize, no. They brought a clipboard, a printed emergency motion, and a fake radio frequency scanner they claimed detected unregistered munitions. That's right. The HOA now believed they had probable cause for an armed search. Karen strutted behind them in her pastel battle armor, heels, sunglasses, binder of bylaws. "You left us no choice," she said. "You've escalated this by resisting peaceful inspection." I asked if she'd read the statute on forced entry into a federally recognized security facility. She smirked. "We've consulted legal counsel. Their legal counsel, it turns out, was her cousin Ted, a paralegal who once handled a traffic ticket. The citation they held up was printed on HOA letterhead with clip art gavel icons. No judge. No court seal. Just lines like, per community order, all tactical equipment to be inventoried for threat mitigation. I stood at the threshold, still unreadable. The lock behind me wasn't just a lock, it was tied into the facility's internal tracking system. I tapped a code into the hidden panel near the frame. A green light blinked once. Inside, silent systems armed. Cameras adjusted. Every step they took from here would be recorded and backed up to an off-site encrypted server. They didn't know that. One of them pulled out a crowbar. "Last chance," he said, puffing his chest. "Let us in, or we remove this barrier ourselves." "You step 1 inch past this door," I replied, "and the next people you talk to will wear real badges." He didn't blink. Just drove the crowbar into the steel, expecting resistance like a residential deadbolt. It didn't even scratch. I let the moment sit. Then I pulled out my phone and sent a single text. "Breach initiated. Level 2. That's when the facility took over. A soft click sounded in the concrete behind the walls. Thermal sensors engaged. Independent backup power kicked in. Locks magnetized. My perimeter wasn't just for privacy. It was designed for delayed response tactical containment, non-lethal, but utterly inescapable. They stepped back, startled. "What was that?" "Welcome to Site Redstone," I said. "You just triggered a certified counter-intrusion protocol. Everything you do now goes to the Department of Defense." Karen's confidence wobbled. "You're bluffing." That's when the alarm activated. Not loud. Just a low, rhythmic pulsing tone, not audible beyond 50 yards, but designed to agitate. Directional sound emitters under the awning kicked in next, producing that high-frequency buzz only certain age groups could hear. The HOA enforcers winced. One dropped his crowbar and backed up. The others reached for their ears. "You're not under attack," I said, standing calmly, hands at my sides. "This is a passive deterrent system. You're still in the warning phase. Leave now, and nothing gets filed." Karen didn't move. Her eyes were locked on the blinking panel near the door. "That's illegal," she snapped. "You can't run military operations on residential property. This isn't residential property. It's a certified defense-connected facility operating under Title 32. And you just broke in." She shook her head. "That can't be true. This is just a house." I opened my phone and tapped into the facility display. A holographic layout of the site projected silently from the ground, detailing the structural reinforcements, access points, server cores, and off-grid capabilities. She recognized none of it, of course, but her instinct knew what it meant. Then the speakers cut in. A calm male voice. "Unauthorized entry confirmed. All non-registered persons must vacate immediately or be detained for federal processing. This message will repeat." Karen panicked. "You set us up." "No," I said. "I warned you." Two of the HOA men tried to flee. One tripped a motion sensor by the garage. A pressure sprayer deployed and doused them in ultraviolet dye, harmless, but impossible to scrub off for days. It's used to mark targets in night raids. I saw their faces change. The denial cracked. Finally, they realized this wasn't about lawn care and property lines anymore. They'd wandered into a world where their clipboard meant nothing. Where paperwork didn't trump protocol. Karen backed away slowly, still holding her binder like it was a Bible. "I'll have you arrested for intimidation." "Try it," I said. "Every second of this encounter is recorded, synced, and triple-backed. Your citations are fake. Your patrols are unlicensed. Your authority stops where my fence begins. Actually, 10 feet before that." That's when the sheriff rolled up. I hadn't called him. The system had. It's connected to a network that flags local law enforcement the moment there's a civilian breach of a secured site. Sheriff Collins stepped out of the cruiser, took one look at the mess, and sighed like a man who's had to break up too many HOA barbecues gone nuclear. Karen rushed him. "He's running a black site. This is illegal." The sheriff raised one hand. "Karen. Stop. No. You don't understand. He's got weapons. He's got drones. He turned toward me. "You activated 32C? Level 2. Passive only." He nodded. "Good. You got footage?" I handed him the drive. "Everything. Audio. Visual. Time-coded. You'll want the part where she authorizes forced entry with her signature." Karen gasped. "That's a lie. That's a forged document." "It's your handwriting," I replied. "On your HOA letterhead, delivered to my door on camera." The sheriff called for backup, not because he needed it, but because protocol required it. Karen was still yelling about secret bunkers and neighborhood safety when she was gently guided into the back of the cruiser. The HOA security boys sat on the curb, dye-stained and dejected. Sheriff walked back over. "You filing charges?" "Not yet. I'm waiting to see what DCSA says. Might escalate to federal interference." "Good call. You want me to flag the HOA?" "Already done. Their legal immunity's about to get tested." He whistled. "Hell of a setup you got here." "It's not a setup," I said. "It's a safe space. They just weren't smart enough to read the signs." And I wasn't done. Because this wasn't just trespass. This was coordinated. Planned. That meant someone signed off. Someone manipulated the HOA into weaponizing policy to breach a facility that was never theirs to touch. That meant the real enemy hadn't shown their face yet. By the end of the week, Karen had declared a state of emergency governance over the entire HOA. Apparently, one failed attempt to breach my property wasn't enough humiliation. She doubled down. A memo went out to all residents warning them that a paramilitary individual was occupying Lot 17 and that she, as chairwoman, was invoking Article 9.4, temporary authority during high-risk security conditions. The residents didn't know what to believe. Most ignored her. Some got curious. A few believed every word. One neighbor, a retired dentist, knocked on my door asking if I was harboring missiles. I offered him coffee and showed him the permit from the Department of Defense. He left in stunned silence. Then came the flyers. Every mailbox in the neighborhood got one. Headline in all caps: "Danger among U.S. unregulated warfare materials on your street." Below that, a badly photoshopped image of me in uniform standing in front of a mushroom cloud. Real subtle. I didn't react. I didn't respond. I just added it to the file. My lawyer, former JAG officer, no nonsense, scarier than I'll ever be in a courtroom, started drafting the cease and desist order. The flyers alone were libel, but that wasn't the goal. I wanted escalation. I wanted Karen to step 1 inch further over the line. Because the moment she did, every inch of her HOA empire would collapse. She didn't disappoint. 3 days after the flyers, she filed a motion with the HOA board to formally reclassify my property. Her argument? That the presence of classified materials and tactical technology constituted a zoning violation under community development regulations. Never mind that the land was legally distinct from HOA jurisdiction, never mind that zoning laws were state-handled, never mind that she was citing rules meant for lawn ornaments and carports. She bulldozed the motion through the board with 3 other yes-men, 2 of whom owed her favors for burying past violations. She was riding high on power and paranoia. So I let her ride. The next HOA meeting was held in the community clubhouse, normally used for bingo and wine tastings. This time, it looked like a courtroom circus. Karen brought a printed binder labeled "Exposing the Military Occupation." I came alone. No fanfare. No threats. Just a plain folder and a flash drive. She called the meeting to order like she was presiding over the Nuremberg trials. "We are here to address the ongoing security threat posed by Mr. Logan's paramilitary operations," she declared. His activities violate our shared values and endanger our residents. One board member asked. Is there proof of a violation? Karen flipped to a page in her binder. Numerous. He has installed reinforced fencing, visible cameras, uses coded communication, and maintains weapons storage. This matches the DHS threat profile for domestic radicalization. I waited for the laughter. There was none. Some people were nodding. A few looked uneasy. Propaganda works when you wrap it in fear and laminate it. So I stood. Let me be clear, I said, voice calm, firm. The property at Lot 17 is not subject to your zoning authority. It is certified under federal statute, with direct oversight from the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency. What you call a threat profile is literally a legal requirement. What you call suspicious is what keeps people like you safe. Karen tried to cut me off. We have authority. You had authority, I said. Now you're under federal investigation for criminal impersonation, unlawful entry, and libel. You've initiated surveillance, published false information, and attempted to breach secure storage. You've abused your title and coerced a board vote without disclosure of conflict of interest. I inserted the flash drive into the presentation monitor. The screen behind me lit up with footage from the prior incursion. Time-stamped video of the HOA's fake enforcers attempting to crowbar their way into a DCSA-certified structure. Audio logs of Karen's directives. Her voice. Her words. Her threats. Then I played the cease and desist letter. Read aloud by my lawyer, recorded just that morning, addressed to the entire board. It included notice of pending legal action, exposure to personal liability, and formal audit filings for HOA financials dating back 3 years. Karen went pale. This is intimidation, she cried. No, I said. This is exposure. You declared war on the wrong man. The room went quiet. Dead quiet. One of the board members, an older woman named Marlene who'd voted yes, stood up and said, I didn't know any of this. I thought this was about community safety. You were lied to, I told her. The documents are public. The property boundary lines are filed with the county. And Karen knew it. She gambled you'd never check? Karen snapped. This man has threatened our values. He's militarized a neighborhood. No, I said. I professionalized a facility. You militarized a committee. By the time the meeting ended, the board had suspended Karen's authority pending review. The vote wasn't even close. I walked out without looking back. That night, I got a call from the DCSA liaison. We've received your files. Internal Affairs is greenlighting the follow-up. Expect auditors. What kind? I asked. The kind that don't knock. Perfect. Karen thought the worst thing in the world was a man who didn't obey. She was about to learn the real threat was a man who obeyed the rules better than she ever could.